You know what you're here for. 2008 movie, Frost Nixon, based on the 1977 interviews, nominated for Best Film, Best Director, and Best Actor, Frank Langella, who was robbed. And I'll tell him that when he's here to hear it from me. 92% fresh on the Rotten Tomatoes thing. With no further ado.
Thank you for staying. We are just so pleased to have the incomparable Frank Langella here with Ken Hughes moderating. Please welcome them.
Just like him, don't I? Sorry about the clothes. Look at how nice he got all dressed up in that.
Well, I don't have any credentials. I have to make sure they let me in. So, this is going to be a little bit less intense as an interview.
Less intense than what? Than that. Oh, okay. All right.
I read that you decided not to do an imitation of Richard Nixon, but decided instead to try to find the essence of him. And I was wondering if you could tell us what you see as the essence of him.
Fear, mostly, and a tremendous discomfort in his own body and his own soul. I didn't think I would ever find him, and I didn't think I could play him, actually, which is always a great thing for an actor, to be uncertain, never to think, oh, I got this one. I didn't, I found him finally after watching maybe 12 or 14 hours of tape at the Museum of Radio and Television in New York, and it was something I live for as an actor, which is the lucky accident. I'd been watching for 5 hours, and I thought, I got to get out of this one. I'm not going to do this one. I'm going to call the director and tell him he's made a mistake. And I went to the bathroom and put it on hold, and when I came back, I put the tape on hold. And and when I came back, I pressed the wrong button. I pressed slow-mo instead of play. And I leaned forward to fix it, and I looked at him. And in the slow motion, I saw him. I saw the fear in his eyes. I saw the lawyer mind ticking, and the way the lips went. And then I went back and watched everything, hours and hours of him in slow motion. And it was, for me, the very beginning of my understanding of him, because I can't play anybody unless I know him inside before outside. And I knew I wasn't going to play a president. And I knew I wasn't going to play the cliches, because everybody's a man or a woman, and they're that first. So until I can find that first, whether he's a president or a ditch digger didn't really matter to me. But what I saw in the eyes was most important.
It was fear.
Yes, it was fear and a tremendous, brilliant, analytical mind and an ability to shift very, very quickly. And also there's a wonderful book, I think it's by Tom Wicker. And the first scene of that book is Nixon's coming down a very long hallway underground between the Senate and the, I don't know where it was, House of Representatives. And Wicker says that he's coming towards Nixon, and he sees Nixon walking with his head down in that way Nixon had, and moving forward. And Wicker said, I knew if I didn't back up against the wall, he would simply run me over, that he wasn't going to make way. He was in his own world, and that was his understanding, beginning of his understanding.
Well, I've been listening to the Nixon tapes as part of my job for a decade and a half, and I don't think I could come up with a better two-trait summary of Nixon, other than he's driven by fear and had a tremendous analytical mind, probably superior to any other politician of his generation.
When he, it's a cliche, but when he was good, he was absolutely very good. He was brilliant, really brilliant. And also I felt very, very strongly that I would not diminish him in any way. I would not try to diminish him. I certainly wouldn't try to make fun of him or comment on him. Because once I choose a character, he's my guy. Even if he's a serial killer, I have to find the human inside that causes the event. And very often when people play well-known, renowned figures, they play the event, not the person. And I went to his house and sat on the little bed that he grew up on with 4 brothers in one room. I couldn't even stand up in the attic where he grew up. And I looked out the window and I saw what he saw. And I thought, what would it be like to be, one of 4 brothers whose older brother just kept hitting you in the back of the head, saying, you'll never amount to anything, you'll never be. And Harold was, he got the girls first, and he was, and I grew up that way. I grew up sort of like a nerd with an older brother who was always knocking me around. So I was able to see what the seed of Nixon's insecurity came from.
By the way, I'm from New Jersey, too.
You want? Oh, my condolences. Not really, I love it. Yeah, we turned out okay.
Speaking of how people turn out, Richard Nixon's arc in life was, great triumph, then disaster. Your life seems to be getting better and better, at least from the professional perspective, that one can see, as far as a public career goes. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, what it takes to be successful into your 7th or 8th decade.
Hey, 7th or 8th, it is my 7th or 8th day. I'm 76, so is that my 7th or 8th?
Yes.
Because I'm going into my 8th, yeah. It takes one word, and I've had it all my life, and then I've lost it, and when I've lost it, I don't do well. I do master classes in acting, and I write the word on a piece of paper and I put it in my pocket, and at the end I say, if you can do what's here in this one word, if you have this, you can succeed. And 99% of my students never get it. I did it on Charlie Rose. I wrote it on a piece of paper, and even Charlie didn't get it. People say commitment, or they say sincerity, or they say any number of things. But the word is focus. If you have focus, it doesn't matter what, you can do anything. One of the things I'm most proud of that I didn't know was going to happen, and I just caught it as I was coming in, was that when we were shooting the film, Ron Howard asked me, he said that Hans Zimmer, who did the music, would like you to learn how to do an arpeggio. He said, it's really simple. You just and then we'll cut from the arpeggio to your face, and then someone will come in under the piano. And I said, no, I really don't want to do that. I really want to learn to play. I don't know why I said it. Focus. And I said, I'd like to learn, and I had 2 months. He said, well, Frank, it's a 2.5-minute little piece that Nixon wrote. I said, and I learned it, and I played it, and that is me live playing it. And of course, the morning after, I couldn't so much as do one note. But it's a theory I have, and it's been proven right. You can learn anything. Look at these poor people on Dancing with the Stars. Some can learn well and some can't, but you can learn anything if you're focused. And I egocentrically and narcissistically, I wanted to learn to play the piano at 72 years old. Now, I didn't learn to play the piano. I just learned to play that song with 2 hands, which was, as a kid, I wanted to take piano lessons, and I didn't. But my mind went, I got to do this, and I did it. Because then it went away. But in terms of a larger picture, as an actor, I've always had focus my whole life. Now, in between jobs, I've fallen apart like every other human being, and I've had fallow periods and no work and running out of money and kids and family, all that stuff. But in my work, the focus has always been there.
I'm going to ask just one more question before opening it to the audience, because I don't want to be all selfish up here.
Be selfish.
can only imagine as an actor, sometimes you would want to converse with the people that you portray. What would you have said to Richard Nixon if you could just tell him one thing that he really needed to know that in your eyes he failed to grasp?
No one's ever answered me that question, asked me that question, and my mind is racing about what I would feel like in the reverse. I don't think one can change people. I don't think one can make anybody not be an alcoholic or a self-destructive person or anything. I think you can only support. I learned this the hard way with my own children. You just have to say, I love you, I care about you, I'm here. If you choose to do these self-destructive things, I'll catch you when you fall, but you're going to have to be the one to get up yourself. That's taken me a lifetime to learn. I think if I had ever met Mr. Nixon and I was ever in a position to say anything to him, I would have probably just said, I so regret, sir, that you are so hard on yourself, because you're such a worthy man and so many things you do so well. Had I met him after Watergate, and had I had the nerve, I would have said, the cover-up is what killed you, not the crime. Because the crime is minor compared to the crimes that are committed today by politicians and everybody else. The nation's tolerance for bad behavior is less and less and less. I would have said, A, you shouldn't have done it. B, if you had just admitted you'd done it, just like all of us would, it's my fault, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, it would have gone away. It's like Martha Stewart. Why didn't she just say, yeah, I took a little thing, I'm sorry, what's the fine, I'll pay it. But so many people don't do that. So many people are afraid to admit that they're wrong about something, and they think that if they pour more cover on it, it's going to go away. But even more than that, prior to the crime, I would have looked at a man who I thought was immensely tortured and said, you know, your brother wasn't right. You became president of the United States. You married the woman you loved. You were both virgins. You took her on dates with other guys as her driver. That's focus. You know? That's focus. I just would have asked him to forgive himself, which is probably what I would say to almost anybody who's tormented.
Excellent answer. It reminds me of something I think I read that Laurence Olivier said about playing villains. You don't play a villain. You have to figure out how to love your monster.
Or you have to love your guy. And when you're an actor, you find yourself in the most remarkable places, and this being one of them. I was at the White House once having a conversation with, here I go dropping names, but I have nothing else to drop. And the Clintons were part of the small group around the table, and they were saying very nice things about Mr. Nixon and me. And I asked them what their impression was of him, and they said, well, nobody ever invited him to the White House until Bill became president, and he said we should have Mr. Nixon. And he arrived with 3 questions, one for Chelsea, one for Hillary, and one for Bill, each to do with something he thought was interesting to each of those 3 people. And when he asked all 3 questions, he was done. He had no more conversation, he had no more, he couldn't do small talk, he couldn't do anything. It's why he's the most fascinating president of the 20th century, because he really is the, forgive me for using this word, I don't mean it literally, because I just saw a brilliant show in New York about freaks called Sideshow. He's the freak in all of us, you know. He's the, we get uncomfortable around him because he manifests so completely the worst of what we each feel about ourselves when we're feeling bad about ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we want to open it up to you all. We've got people with microphones, so the first one, the first hand that I see, I think probably this lady here would be the easiest for you to reach.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
First of all, we wanted to say thank you for doing this.
it's always great to have an opportunity to talk to somebody in the film business as somebody who's always been interested in film my whole life. So thank you.
Thank you.
I guess I wanted to ask, how did your view of Nixon change before you took on the role, and then during the role, while you were playing him, and then after filming was done? So yeah, how did your view of him change?
Well, it changed dramatically. First of all, I was politically, I wasn't interested. At that time, all I was doing was chasing girls around summer stock theaters in 70-something. So I didn't pay much attention to him at all as a young man. But I politically felt, oh, this guy's committed a crime, this guy's funny to look at, he's a bit of a clown, he's diametrically opposed politically to where I am. But then the more I watched him, the more I worked on him, the more I saw him, the more the torment inside him became evident to me and strong to me. And the less judgmental I became in general, and you do that as you get older, you get kinder, and we're all very harsh on each other. You know, someone's terrible crime is all terrible from our point of view, but from inside of us we have something equally. So I became very, if not forgiving, very compassionate about him. And his whole family came to see the show, except for the daughters. The son-in-laws came, and the children, the grandchildren came, and one of them came into my arms and said, "Thank you for making Grandpa a human being." And that was a great compliment, because first and foremost, that's what he was.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Great performances. I think you and Michael Sheen, I love Sam Rockwell too. I think he's amazing. But I'm wondering if you can address what it's like to work with Ron Howard as a director. I think from a directorial standpoint, he did an amazing job on this show.
Yes, he did, unheralded, I think, because the film wasn't a financial success. But I make a lot of fun of Ronnie because he's very, you know, and he has a white envelope that he scribbles things on in between takes, and he's always writing things down, and he was very, very focused and very determined, and wanted this film to be as good as he made it. And for some reason it didn't quite click with the public, but he probably did me one of the greatest favors any director's ever done for me. I just finished the Broadway production after London. I played Nixon for a year on stage, and I was comfortable in my skin with him. And I've made 60 movies, so I thought, oh, I'll find a way to scale him right to where he should be. And the first day we shot the resignation speech, which was cut from the movie. And it's a scene where Nixon comes in and talks to the lighting guy and says, how's your daughter? And makes up a lot of small talk. And then he addresses the public. And I did it, and Ron didn't say anything. And then I did it again, and he didn't say anything. And Kevin Bacon was standing off to the side. And he came up to me after the third take and said, "Great, it's really film acting. It's wonderful. It's not stage work, but I clocked you, and you did the scene 3 times in exactly 3 minutes and 42 seconds. And you know, I have a lot of film." He said, "So what you're doing without realizing it is you're playing in a pattern. It's real, it's honest, but it's the pattern you've been used to for a year and a half. Break it up." He said, "I don't care if you take 4 minutes, 5, 6 minutes. Look at the woman a long time, lose your place in the script, whatever you want to do." And on the first day, he freed me to do a filmic performance. He liberated me from any idea that I had to wait to get a laugh, which I was used to in the play, or that I had to get a moment in time for Michael to do something else, because it was film work. And from that moment on, I trusted him completely. He's a gift to an actor in that he's extraordinarily mindful of what an actor needs to be comfortable, what he needs to be, here's this word again, focused. So the only downside to Ron, and I've told him this, and I've actually said it on the air in front of him, is he does takes forever and ever and ever. You end up doing 25 or 35 takes of something. Your side of it, Michael's side of it, the crowd side of it, it gets to be, that's difficult. And then in the big telephone scene, I did that speech 16 times in a row, never messing it up, not once, and never cutting. And finally, when the film was done, I asked him which take he chose. And he said, I think it was 13 or 14. And I said, why? He said, well, there was a glint of light in the window that I liked. And I took out my gun and I shot. But I've worked for him any time. Yeah. Yes. Oh, there's a lady here. And then there's a lady there. There's ladies everywhere.
I just wondered if David Frost had anything to do with the film, or if you talked with him about it, or subsequently talked with him.
Yes, David and I became very good friends, and I became friends with his wife and his family, and some very clever woman decided that David and I would make a lot of money doing things like, we're not making a dime, are we? But they would pay David and I exorbitant sum of money if we'd go to a town and talk about Nixon. So we did a couple of times, and we'd spend great long dinners. He was terrified of the idea, absolutely. I met him, he gave these incredible lawn parties at his home in England, and everyone in the world was there. And he walked up to me and he was just, why are you doing this? Why are they, is anybody doing it? And he was immensely nervous. And the first preview he came to, he was literally trembling and perspiring. And then when it was a hit, it had been his idea. He then adopted it and came often and brought celebrities and sort of, he reissued his book. You know, he's an entrepreneurial fellow. He just jumped on the bandwagon.
He was happy with Michael Sheen?
He was very happy with Michael Sheen. Very happy. And very, you know, it's hard to see yourself, so sometimes he said, can't you tell Michael not to be so shallow in places? And I said, why didn't you give yourself that criticism? But basically he was one of the finest interviewers ever. And I know almost all the interviewers of the modern, and it's a great talent, and he had it. This lady here, I know, is waiting.
Of course you did Dracula on Broadway, and then the film, and of course you did this on Broadway, which I saw. Unfortunately, I was too young to see Dracula on Broadway, which I'd seen. But when you went from Broadway to the film, did you have any concerns or anything that you wanted to make sure that was captured or happened on the film? And did you have a lot of input in that transition from Broadway to film?
In both instances, my major concern was how do we keep the integrity of the character. With Ron, there was absolutely no problem. The first rehearsal, Ron said, you tell me what the most important moments, what are the key moments in each scene for you, the emotional key moments, and I will be sure to cover them. I'm not promising you that I'll be on you for them, because he had his own vision. But I gave him pages and pages and pages of what I believe Nixon's emotional through line was, and he respected every one of them. The situation in Dracula wasn't the same, because Universal and John Badham and Walter Mirisch, who were wonderful guys, but they really wanted a gothic horror movie, and I just kept saying, go rent a Christopher Lee movie, rent the Rank Studio movies. Dracula isn't that to me. He's a romantic gothic hero. So that was a battle royal every single day to try to keep Dracula what I wanted him to be, which is an original romantic figure. And I won that battle, I would say 75%.
I gotta say, in preparation for the interview last night, I watched Dracula. And
My hearing.
magnificent. A lot of the movie has aged, but not your performance. Yeah, you know, the original sexy vampire.
A lesson for that too, focus will be our word, folks, for today, is something that Paul Newman said when he was asked what he would do if, for instance, the director doesn't want to go in your direction and wants to put cornflakes all over your face and fangs. And I had terrible battles with John Badham about fangs and wolf's eyes. I said, I'm not doing it. Every other actor's done it. This is a different, you should have not made the movie with me if you didn't want, if you wanted all that extra stuff. And he played every trick in the book on me. He said, well, just put them in and let me see what they're like. And stand under that light by that fireplace. So I came down in my boxer shorts and a t-shirt wearing fangs. And he said, why aren't you dressed? I said, because you're supposed to be looking at fangs, aren't you? So I knew what he was going to do, was try to get me to do it. But anyway, Paul Newman's advice, which is the best advice you could give an actor when he's asked, what's it like if the actor opposite you maybe isn't quite giving you what you need, or you don't feel comfortable, or the costume doesn't fit, or the director is trying to push you to do something you don't want to do. Paul said, I play my character. And it's great advice. So that's, if you're telling me I survived Dracula, it's because I didn't play anything around me that was negative. If John was pushing an actor to overact, or, just do that hammy, gothic, horror film acting, I just stayed my course. And it's true with Nixon too. If Ron wanted 35 takes, I had to find it within myself every single take to go back to the basic and play it, because the audience is only going to see it once, and they're not going to know that I've just done it 34 times. So I have to find a way to play my character.
Focus.
Focus.
And I hope you're writing another book, by the way.
Where are you? Who said that? Oh, you're right. I am. People are dropping dead left and right. So in the last month I have written, for my second book, I've written Robin Williams, Elaine Stritch, Joan Rivers, and Lauren Bacall. I knew them all very well. They're leading my generation. Yes?
Extraordinary
Thank you.
performance, particularly seeing Hal Holbrook last night as Mark Twain. This is just totally immersive. I didn't think of you as film at all. I almost began to believe I was seeing you on the stage, but that extraordinary telephone conversation between Frost and Nixon the night before the final interview, does that have a basis in fact?
No, that's total fiction.
It is, okay.
Yeah, total fiction. And there's a little side story to that, which is that after I played it for 150 performances in England, and we'd come to New York for the previews, the director, Michael Grandage, who directed the stage production, came back and said, darling, I think it's getting maybe a bit theatrical. I don't know that Nixon would do that. So by that time I had developed quite a rapport with Michael, and I said, okay, F you. I'm going to go out on stage tonight, and I'm going to play the telephone scene with my hands in my pockets for the whole 4.5-minute monologue. And he said, you can't do it, darling. You can't do it. I said, watch me. And then, of course, I got in the wings, and I thought, oh, God, I played it for 100. I played it with gestures I can't. And I locked my hands in my pockets, and it was agony. But I found something so extraordinary in Nixon's pent-up rage by keeping my hands in my pockets that I never again, for the rest of the 6 months run, ever took my hands out of my pockets. And I didn't take them out of my pockets for the movie either. I kept them dug in. It's what I call the lucky accident. Yep. Where? Sorry.
Right here.
I just have a question. In reading the credits, I saw that prosthetic was listed, and I just wondered how substantial that was, and if that helped you get into the character, and if you could just talk a little bit more about it.
It was very substantial, and great makeup takes a long time, so it can look like nothing happened. I would get up about 4:30 or 5. I'd go to the trailer, and the makeup man and the hair lady were there, and my assistant, and often my daughter, who was close by. And we would have a party in the makeup trailer while he applied the nose, and the little moles all had to match where he thought they would, and the teeth. And it would take about 2.5 hours of a lot of fun and laughter, and then the week would go on, which would take 45 minutes. But I established a condition with Ron Howard. I said, the minute I appear, the minute the door of my trailer opens, I'm Nixon. And no one must speak to me other than as Nixon, which some people misinterpreted as grandiosity, but actually it was because I am by nature a storyteller and a hanger-outer, and I like other actors, and I like standing and feeding my face with donuts, which is a terrible thing to do. And I said, but instinctively I knew that if you're playing the President of the United States, you really can't stand and chat with another actor, casually, and then suddenly turn and have that actor have to react to you. I've been in the presence of 5 presidents, and I'm a pretty relaxed guy, and I've been at this a long time. Something happens to you, and I'm going to the White House this month for the Kennedy Center honors, and I know it'll happen again. Just as I'm getting a little closer to Mr. Obama, I'll go, oh my God, here comes the president. Or maybe he's going to go, oh my God, here comes Frank Langella. But it just happens to you inside. It's the president, and I've met many, many, many major politicians in my life. I never fail to get that little. Clinton is the person I've spent most time with, but whenever I see him again, he's still Mr. President to me. Now, what was the original question? Oh, yes. So once it was on, once I was Nixon until the makeup came off. If I got in my trailer for lunch or something and I was there, or we just kibitzed, but everywhere I went on the lot, every actor who came up to me, and after a while they didn't come up to me anymore because they actually wanted the distance. They began to like the feeling of that's the president. The crew called, I didn't ask for this, but the crew said, Mr. President, we're ready. On the last day I shot the confession scene where Nixon says, I made a mistake. We were in a back room and Kevin Bacon said, is it you or is it Nixon? I said, look, it's the last day. Hi, Kevin. I hadn't spoken to him for 2 months except as Nixon. He said, can I tell you a joke? I can't tell the joke because it's really, really disgusting. So he told me this joke that was hilarious. And I had to go on and do the confession scene. And then when it was over, I went up to him and hit him as hard as I could. And I said, that's why I wanted to play Nixon with you all the time, because I couldn't do anything in the middle of confessing but think of this dirty joke. So the makeup was an enormous help to me in terms of getting into character and staying in character.
We have time for one more
Okay.
question.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Well, let's do 2 more. There's a pretty girl and a pretty boy.
So this is related actually to what you just said, but I was wondering, obviously you had had a long and successful acting career prior to making this film and getting involved with this. So I guess I was wondering if taking on this monumental and legendary figure of Nixon, who's so towering and ingrained in our collective mythos, if that changed at all your perspective on acting, or any sort of way that you kind of brought your consciousness into your future projects.
Great question, and yes, it did. It had an immense effect on me because I didn't feel I could play him. Really say, bring the mic over to this guy so you're ready for him next. There, you go. I honestly felt that I was ill-equipped to play him, which made me determined, because here I go again, a focused person. It made me feel that I was going to have to do triple the amount of work. And when he succeeded, it made me feel tremendously, proud is the wrong word. It humbled me in the knowledge that one can do anything if you feel driven enough and committed enough to it and are, in a way, even frightened enough to fail. And the turning point was that after 4 days of rehearsal, I called the woman I was then living with, and she was in New York City. And I said to her, I'm going to ask Grandage to let me out of this because I sound like Mr. Magoo. Or Jimmy Stewart, you know. I just was, I'm very brave. So I would get up and make a complete fool of myself. And I knew I was making a fool of myself. I just wasn't there. And Michael Sheen was David Frost from the first day. Absolutely perfect. And so she said, go get the script and read me a monologue on the phone, London to New York. So I read her a monologue, and there was a long pause, and she loved me, so I expected words that couldn't, you know, darling, don't worry, keep going. She said, you're absolutely terrible. What are you going to do about it? And it just hit my competitive streak, and the next morning I went in and I just went for it, and Michael Grandage said, oh my God, I can see the beginning. So what Nixon did for me, and always will, and Dracula too, and a few other parts, is if you want to conceive of something different, if you want to break ground, which I feel I did with Dracula and I did with him, stick to your, and this is a good lesson in life about anything, it doesn't matter what the general overall belief is about anything. Oh, we've always done it this way, or this is the way it's supposed to be. Well, I see it in a different way, and this is true in how you cook a meal. It's true in how you approach someone. You don't always have to say to a girl at a mixer, what's your major? There's another way to approach her. You know, so just stick to your belief. And even if you fail, you will fail nobly. Yes, sir.
I was curious, you spoke of the fear and the analytic part of Richard Nixon, but I was curious in finding the voice of Richard Nixon, how you went from Mr. Magoo, because in the movie there's a line about having the sexiest voice alive, and I wonder if that played into finding the voice. No, I think it's Miss Cushing says, oh yes, and he has the sexiest voice ever.
Really?
Something like that. Maybe
I should
that
watch,
just naturally.
I should watch scenes I know. I have no memory of that at all. I found the voice by not trying to imitate him. I found the voice by stopping listening to him at all. Once I'd ingested him as a person, then I decided whatever noise came out of me was going to be honest. You know, I'm an American actor, and I began this in England, and the English really believe in working from the outside in. So an English actor would have worked diligently to make the noise. I love Michael, and we've ended up friends, even though we had difficulties during it because we're just in separate camps, and that happens. But we're great pals now, and Michael walked in on the first day, opened his mouth, and he was David Frost. The sound, the cadence, everything, the whole cast was applauding and laughing like crazy. And I was Mr. Magoo, you know. Or actually, the first time I did it, I just read it as myself. And Peter Morgan, the writer, was asked a question about a certain scene, and he said, well, Frank isn't giving me anything at the moment, so I can't say. And I said, really, did you write this in 20 minutes? So it took me weeks, but when a sound happened, it happened organically, and I don't think I sound like Nixon, really. I just sound different than I sound, and I found something inside me that made me talk in a particular kind of way, but it was never in an effort to imitate him, because the last thing I ever want audiences to feel when they watch me is, oh, isn't he clever? I want them to be viscerally moved. I want you to be lost in me. I want you to watch and forget I'm acting. The greatest thing you can do as an actor is to have people unaware that you're doing anything at all except inhabiting the person you are. Then you can cry and you can laugh and you can have, my job is to make you emotional. It's not for me to be emotional. My job is to move you in one direction or another. Does that answer your question?
It surely does. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you.